maybe like here. Have you guys seen Elena?
She did. I don't know. She probably has been this at all. She got lucky and got They were doing different stories.
Oh, what's this?
We're talking about the cat. I don't work for the cat.
Cat, how you doing?
Hi, nice to meet you.
Do the live edits and we can make sure we have it squared away.
All right, so we are going to start with our work session agenda. We have a robust work session. Some items that we could not get to from the retreat, we're going to lift up here, but last work session, we talked about our employee ombudsman policy. And so we'll start with that conversation. It will be my hopes that we can get this policy in a good spot, waive first reading and have the policy go into effect if we are good to go now with it. So I will turn it over to Dr. Robinson and Dr. Alfaki.
All right, good afternoon. We definitely want to go over the ombuds policy. First thing we want to do is go over some of the things and the edits that have been captured. So if we can go up to letter B, scope of authority and independence. And what we want to do that's a little bit differently, we want to be able to go over the policy and then we want to be able to construct and do live edits as you guys want us to capture for you. And so it says the ombuds shall remain impartial and neutral and shall hold no other position with or beyond WCPSS that might otherwise compromise their independence. And so if you notice there, that is the language that was captured. We took out although and put in the ombuds shall function independently from control, limitations, influence, or interference by any board member, administrator, or school system employee. And then you will notice there that what was taken out was in the blue, which was scratched out. And then is the ombuds position shall be filled by one or more independent contractors of the board. And so as you look at that, then the blue is captured. The superintendent or designee may offer input to the board for evaluation purposes on ombuds function and activities, but the board shall be ultimately responsible for overseeing the ombuds performance. And so as you look at that particular paragraph, is there any other language that you would want changed or omitted or edited?
Board members, any thoughts? We'll start with you, Ms. Rice.
With the scope and authority, just for clarity purposes, can you help me understand from our conversation that we had around them holding position or being a part of it? That's not the same as indicating that the scope of them being able to participate. Because remember, one of the things that we desired when we spoke about it was they need to be able to be at other, neutral position, other positions within the UA tournament. So we're not talking about, because it's talking about boards and stuff. The question was raised by Ms. Edmonds, I believe. I can't remember, but sorry to put you on the spot. But the question was raised about ombudsmen, if they are on other committees or something. It's not that there's necessarily direct influence, but it's more about knowledge and understanding about those particular things, if you recall what I'm saying?
Yes.
So can we put that in scope or perspective a little bit more for me to see if is that different than this line or something else?
So what I remember the conversation was talking about serving as a ad hoc or an ex-official member of the employee comp review, not to have any sway or anything, but therefore if a staff person files a complaint, they would have, I guess, some background information on that process, not to have a vote or anything of that nature, but just to serve as a ex-official member of that. And I think that's where Attorney Ramey was supposed to get some clarity on that for us.
Okay, so if we can continue, and then once he gets here,
we can flag that.
we'll be able to flag that so that we can go back to it.
Unless Attorney Malone, you can clarify that for us.
He's really been in the weeds on this, so I don't want to try to.
All right.
And he told me he was going to be here, so I didn't even touch base with him.
All right, no worries. And so we'll come back to that first paragraph and we'll make reference to participation in ad hoc committees with the understanding that they will be impartial with no vote, will be able to share additional information. All right, so if we jump in, so are we all good with that paragraph other than that?
We have one question from Ms. Edmonds over here. Ms. Edmonds?
My apologies. I think the way I read this, the next paragraph might address, it does not the next paragraph, the ombuds shall have access to all necessary information, and I'm getting ahead of you because I know you're going through, but I wonder if that somehow addresses Ms. Rice's concern, even though it doesn't say ad hoc committees per se, it does talk about them being able to have access to information, and so that was mine.
So let's go ahead and jump to that paragraph. The ombuds shall be subject to all applicable board policies, including but not limited to all anti-discrimination and anti-harassment policies. The ombuds shall have access to all necessary information and individuals within the school system to the extent permitted by law and board policies and regulations. The ombuds does not have authority to make binding decisions, mandated policies, regulations, or procedures, formally adjudicate disputed matters, or participate in management functions, formal complaints, and resolution procedures or investigations. So based upon that, Board Member Rice, would that capture the concern that you had just discussed that you wanted to make sure was included?
To be honest, not completely.
Okay.
My intent, let's just clarify my intent. My intent with the ombudsman is to be able to, or have language that specifies that they have the ability to be in meetings or committees or boards at any time, and for the purpose of observation or whatever it is, that goes so that they can observe and make some decisions or inform of possible suggestions, because one part of the policy is that they'll be able to share trends or directions, and unless they have the scope of being able to have access to be a part of boards, committees, or whatever it is that they choose to possibly participate in or observe, to make a possible suggestion or decision. That's my intent. So to me, the language does not specify, not that it has to say that verbatim, but the language does not specify that they have this broad access.
So we can flag this until Attorney Ramey gets here and figure out how we can flesh this out a little bit more for us.
Absolutely. So if we go to the next paragraph, other than the flagging to make sure that possibly the language should be changed from access to be inclusive of particular boards and things of that nature, is everybody okay with that? And so that's the only one. So the first paragraph is good. The second paragraph, we want to flag the access and what that access looks like.
Any other comments regarding those first two paragraphs? All right.
Let's go to the next one. The superintendent or designee shall oversee ombuds payments and related expenditures for budgetary purposes in alignment with applicable laws, policies, and procedures, and may offer recommendations to the board or on any increases or decreases in funding for ombuds activities. The board, in its sole discretion, shall determine the appropriate level of funding and resources to be provided to the employee ombuds after considering the recommendations of the superintendent. And you'll notice what has been crossed out is at the board's discretion, the ombuds position may be filled by one or more school system employees or by one or more independent contractors of the board. So that was scratched out. So are there any other recommendations for considerations for edits or something that needs to be omitted?
Any feedback for this particular paragraph that we're discussing? That's right.
So section B is pretty much complete. And so now if we can go ahead and scroll up to the protection from retaliation, looking at C, you will notice there are no specific edits or any changes there. Then if we can go all the way up to number 3, neutrality and impartiality. And within this particular section, you'll notice what's been included. The ombuds shall not serve on any school systems committee or task force without the prior approval of the board chair. And so that goes back again to what Board Member Rice was referencing. Okay, if we go ahead and we get the language changed in section B as far as access, but here in this section it's saying they may be able to participate, but in order to participate, they need the approval of the board chair.
Ms. Edmonds and then Ms. Rice and Ms. Edmonds.
For me, I like this sentence in section 3, neutrality and impartiality, because it specifies shall not serve on. That doesn't limit the ombuds from sitting in on, observing, listening. And so for me, I'm happy with that because it's so specific to serving.
Ms. Rice, did you have a comment on this one?
I'm in agreement with Ms. Edmonds, but I'm sorry, I just lost which section we were at.
So we're on section... Page 4. Yep, page 4 where it says 3, neutrality and impartiality.
That's where I thought we were, but okay, there it is. Yeah, I'm in agreement with what Ms. Edmonds said, but I would like to still invoke my thoughts around serving on, or not serving on, but observing or participating in these committees, even without the chairs.
So it's clear. We'll wait
Okay.
till Attorney Ramey gets here until we... So I have it...
Okay, I'm sorry.
So
Do you want to attempt to at least have a language there for, as if we're saying the ombuds shall not serve on any school system committee or task force, but may observe? However, let's have, do you guys want to go ahead and start trying to do that, or we want to wait?
So is there thumbs up or thoughts on the language that Dr. Robinson suggested.
Question.
Sure, Dr. A.
So in what context are we approving someone to, or having the board chair approve someone who is an ombuds to serve on a committee? I'm not quite sure why we have that language added.
So I believe it was a discussion, we had a healthy discussion around employee comp review committee that would allow the ombudsman person to sit in, participate, or to have a full picture of an employee's complaint. So therefore, when that complaint comes to the ombudsman, they have the background knowledge to assess the situation appropriately. I think that's why that language was sitting there, but again, we can follow up with Attorney Rainey. Dr. Robinson?
No, I'm here at the will of the board. You let me know what you want me to do, and I'll continue to do as you ask.
So was that a clarifying?
Well, I mean, to sit in is one thing, but to serve on a committee in an official capacity is a different matter, right?
Correct. Correct. So do you have some suggestions to that language that you want to recommend to us?
I mean, in terms of impartiality, I think once you start serving in a committee, I feel like there's a risk of losing your impartiality in that capacity. So that's just me.
Any other thoughts? Vice Chair?
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing up that point. It's really interesting. I guess it kind of depends on, like, I'm thinking an ombuds person, if you're on a committee, you're then making decisions, and you're almost choosing sides, and I don't know what committee they might or might not be on. But is that an appropriate role for an ombuds person to then be potentially taking votes on something versus observing and providing the board or whoever with impartial feedback of, here's the process I saw that was problematic or that worked well?
So, Dr. Joe?
Just from an employment standpoint too, we're hiring this person for a very specific reason, and I don't know, what it would even do to their contract, to their, I would start to be concerned that there'd be some bleed of, into other areas and what they were there for if they ended up on these committees.
So, is there a consensus around removing that language so the person does not serve on any committees?
I prefer does not serve.
Ms. Evans?
That's what I was hearing, is that really the sticking point is just shall not serve, and take out the exception of without prior approval of the board chair. I'm hearing it more just not allow it altogether.
Can we just do a thumbs up if that works?
So I want to make sure I'm following correctly. We want to strike out without the prior approval of the board chair, which means they will not serve on any school system committee or task force. And then we just keep all the other language the same.
Now, I do want to flag that may contradict what we were having discussion about with serving on as an ex officio member of the employee relations HR, is it the HR comp review piece? So if that's the will of the board, that's the will of the board. But I just wanted to put that out there. Ms. Rice.
So even with addressing that with our attorneys, so you're saying that they have to be in that role of an ex officio to participate in that, or is that something we need to confirm with attorneys?
Just to confirm, that's what I'm saying, we have to
Right.
confirm that with that. But if that's what what the board wants, we can do that, but
So can we say contingent upon what the attorney tells us? Because we need them to be able to have access. I agree with, they don't need to serve on a committee. I'm not questioning that at all. Again, my intent is about them having access to all meetings and all things to render that impartiality in all spaces
So I believe,
at levels. That's my only intent.
so I do believe earlier in this policy, it says they should have access to all documents, information that is needed. So if it's clear up, I think that's at the top. That answers, and I think it addresses the piece that you're raising.
Yeah, or define needed, or I'm questioning the needed piece, because who's going to determine if it's needed or not needed for them, or needed in whoever is in control of whatever meeting they're in deems that they need information or access to.
Dr. Alfaki, in section B, in the last sentence, can you highlight that so everybody can see it?
The last section of B?
No, in the second paragraph,
Okay.
the last sentence. What is it? No, right before, right after the green strikeout, the ombuds shall have access to all necessary information and individuals within the school system. Chair, that's what you were just making reference to?
Yes.
Okay.
And even, and even in that same space, I know you said you're going to have Attorney Ramey look at that, and possibly even in that same space is, you could put in there about access to all committees or whatever else that might, just a thought. But I'm sure he'll determine where it might need to go.
That works.
Thank you. And so, in essence, those are the only edits and the only changes that were being brought forth for consideration from the board, and looking at the board, the draft policy. And so, when Attorney Ramey gets here, we have to really focus on the language as far as access. What does that mean? And then we have to make the determination whether or not, and I think everybody was in alignment, that we wanted to scratch out without the prior approval of the board chair in that particular sentence on the neutrality and impartiality. Is there anything else that anyone has for consideration prior to us going back to the table and clearing this up so that we can prepare this afternoon?
Was everything other comments or feedback? That works. Chair Malone, do we know if Attorney Ramey will be?
It appears he did not realize this was on for the work session at all. Is it on the regular agenda?
It's on both.
So that must be the problem. He missed the work session part of it.
Gotcha. So is he still,
He's in the office on a call, on a meeting, in a virtual meeting, according to Diana.
So he will not be here at 3:30.
No, he won't be here at 3:30.
So how can we get some clarity on this piece? Because we have about 15 more minutes on this particular session.
Well, I can try to help. So let's go back to the questioning, and I was pointing it to Neil. What is it that we're attempting to accomplish with that? Are we trying to say, do we want to have language that if there are committees that the ombuds is able to sit in on those committees? Is that what we're trying to establish? All right.
Without violating the appearance of being, the bias piece of it. So remaining neutral and impartial is the piece that we are discussing.
I mean, we could add into the sentence that, Dr. Robinson had highlighted, that right before to the extent permitted by law, and to sit in on is not the word I want to use.
Observe?
I like observe, yeah, and to observe any, is it committees and task force? Is that what we're looking to include? Yeah, and to observe, any school system committees and task force, and then pick up what to the extent permitted by law and board policies and regulations.
Board Chair, can I ask a clarifying question? And so, when you talk about the intent of the purpose of the ombuds, and you talk about the impartiality and the neutrality of the work that they're going to be doing, And we talked about participating and not participating, and we also talked about observation. And so is it the intent of the board that this person would be able to observe the interactions, the functions, the structures, the protocol, and then have conversation with the board? Or is it the intent of this person being able to observe and then be able to provide input?
So I think it's a built-in approach. And I think, again, this is a new policy, it's new to the district, so there will be a lot of kinks that we're going to have to work out and learning parts. And so we may get, the contractor may come in and realize that there's parts of this policy that we may need to amend to make their work a little bit more applicable. And so I think, at least I'm open to that, and I would hope that my colleagues would be. But I think what we're trying to do is add a little bit of meat and potatoes to their work, so they're not at least coming to this blind, but there's some set parameters and some guidance for them to conduct their work and be effective. So I see your hand is raised, but I want to give an opportunity for Dr. Taylor to chime in.
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of came in the middle, so I'm not quite sure where you guys are, but we've had extensive conversation on how we want this to function, and that's really having that contract person to come in, to look at any inconsistencies that we might have, and if at any point we come to employ a person as staff, then we've kind of dealt with those parameters. But I know the bulk of it is about making sure there's a way that someone can be that impartial person, and then any of those additional parameters that the board wants to add, we're certainly open to that. But I'll get back up to speed in a minute because I was out talking to the press. But
Taylor, would you be willing to repeat your sentence, and then I'll open up for questions?
So yeah, after school system there in that sentence that you got highlighted, inserting and to observe. Are you going to talk to them?
No, go ahead. Wait, you wanted me to do what?
no, I was
Are you
trying
gonna
to see
talk to
where
them?
you were talking from there.
Oh, no, I was just getting Dr. Taylor squared
Okay.
away.
I'm saying, are you going to type in the link?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I thought it was you, sorry.
No. We're working together as a team.
Okay,
So you
sorry.
got that, Dr.
And
McCann?
to observe,
Okay.
in a school system, committees, and task force, yeah, and then pick up with to the extent permitted by law. Yes.
Which means that we can then remove that sentence that at the bottom that we're having some discussions. But before we go there, I did see a couple of hands. Ms. Caulfield, Dr. Ng, and then Ms. Edmonds. So Ms. Caulfield and then Ms. Rice. Ms. Caulfield?
I think I was just kind of trying to understand what we were saying before, but he might have changed the language. The whole idea is to have somebody that is non-partial, but to be able to sit in on everything, to come back and give feedback and advocate for solutions, right? So they should be able to attend everything, have access to everything, be in there, just not participate.
Correct. Dr. Ng?
And so we're saying that the ombuds can observe or sit to be witness to the conversations at hand. They can or cannot participate in the conversation.
So I think to get back to the original piece, we did not want any participation, so they can still remain
Okay.
neutral and impartial.
Okay. I, for one, is, that person cannot have any kind of voting
No.
rights for that, in terms of that conversation or the meeting. But certainly, I'm open to people's opinions about whether that person can or cannot have conversations within that meeting.
So I'll add this in because I think I'm up to speed now on this particular piece. I think what would be good from this is if we think about the CUMP committee, and quite often we may get feedback from staff that something was not fair about it. So having the ombuds contract person there or actual person to observe what takes place, that now puts them in a position to say, okay, I understand why the employee has an issue, and so we can help you better understand what may or may not be working with this. And so that's why we would be open to the ombuds there, observing what takes place. And I know that's one that rises up real fast in terms of what you probably get a lot of feedback about. And so it is giving them an opportunity to be able to observe and then give feedback. That one gives feedback to the district about the process, but it's also an opportunity for them to give feedback to the employee that may have an issue to help them better understand the process and where they may or may not be incorrect. So, yeah, okay.
Going back to section D, number 3, neutrality and impartiality, I think we should keep, and this may have already been decided, but I need clarity what it was. To keep that sentence, the ombuds shall not serve on any school system committee or task force, and just strike the without the prior strike what's in blue, but leave the rest intact.
That's what we did. So it's,
So we good with that? Okay, it's been struck.
That was not clear to me because we were going between the two.
right. Ms. Rice.
Thank you. I was trying to piggyback on your comment that you made in reference to sharing when in committees, whether they should be able to share or not. And then Mr. Ing alluded to the same statement that I agreed upon, and like, I think it's important for the ombudsman to be able to share information, observe, not only as the superintendent indicated, if there's a concern around board, but also to possibly whoever may be chairing that particular committee or something in reference, so that there can be neutrality or feedback, which is the intent of, I think we said earlier, of what's needed. So maybe not necessarily, or I don't, because if they're going to be able to be a part of a meeting, we know that they're not going to have any voting rights. They're simply there for observation, neutrality, and sharing some positive feedback or whatever to make the meeting or whatever that's happening be more effective, right? And so my only thought is them being able to share that with possibly a chair or something, not necessarily get into the meeting where it sways other people's opinion, and you know, for them to have influence in that way as a larger space, but being able to at least do it with the person, whoever may be leading that particular situation.
And to be clear, it would be staff, it would not be board operations, it would be various complaints that happens throughout the district, so they would share that feedback with the superintendent, because that would be the person they would respond or report to.
Okay.
And that's where that feedback would go to. Dr. Taylor, did I?
Yeah, I think you hit it dead on the head that if they observe and have feedback, I think that's something that they would want to share with the superintendent, so I can better direct how a process may take place. So you're right about that. Yeah.
Any other comments, Ms. Costa?
Just to clarify, but it does actually come back to us in reports, right? So that we reflect on it.
That would be, yes, once the person's, yes. So it's like a two-part approach. Our first part is getting our policy aligned, and then the second phase is bidding out to a contractor so they can compare notes and figure out how their work aligns to our policy, and then once the board approves the contractor, they will start and solely report to the superintendent as a outside agency that is solely there to help, you know, restore confidence and trust when various staff folks have complaints that they feel as if not being properly addressed. Any other questions with this policy? So just to recap, I think we were able to capture the parts that was lifted up.
So we'll go ahead and we'll go over the two parts that were lifted up. Dr. Arthur Keith, if you can scroll up to section B, second paragraph, you'll notice in the blue section, we included "and to observe any school system committee or task force." And so that was included to capture what the board wanted. And then if we scroll all the way down to neutrality and impartiality, we have X'd out without the prior approval of the board chair. Everything else is pretty much in succinct, so what Dr. Alfred Keith and I will do after while the board work session is still going on, we will clean up the policy, and so that we will have it in actual writing and be able to provide that to Ms. Allen, and then we'll be able to present it for action.
And board members, hopefully we can waive first reading, or this will be first or second reading?
Second.
So it would go into effect,
Wait a second.
You waive second.
waiving second and having it go into effect so we can start the process. So therefore, we can collect some data to figure out, how effective this policy is and how this, moving forward to the next phase of this. Does that work? Thumbs up? All hearts and minds clear? Perfect. So that gives us a little bit of time to move to our second part. Thank you, Dr. Robinson and Dr. Alford. We'll move to our board goal and professional development from the retreat. So, Dr. Ng's not here for me to catch him up, but I know that we started the conversation of developing a SMART goal for the board to address, and that SMART goal was centered around addressing student achievement. And so today we're going to tighten this up a little bit, and then we have a special ad hoc committee that will include Dr. Joe, Ms. Gordon, Ms. Rice, and Ms. Caulfield to help clean this up for us. And we'll go from there. So I'll turn over to Ms. Bohr and Dr. Alford Keith.
Where we left off, Dr. Robinson's passing some things off, but where we left off the other day was just, we said we would provide you with a few examples that you can not use it all or use parts of and to make your own, but sometimes it's just helpful to have a visual model there in front of you.
Thank you.
So if you want to just go ahead and review those. And do you need the tape?
Less we need multiple.
Okay. So you may want to just look through and underline parts that you like, and then we'll see if we can do some kind of a combined or a new goal.
Dr. Ng, this is from the retreat where we developed a SMART goal around, as a board, around addressing academic performance, taking a piece of the strategic plan for us to focus on for the year. So that was the simple SMART goal that we discussed at the retreat. And so we'll use this opportunity to kind of fine tune this a little bit before we send it to our special ad hoc committee.
Swanson. If I may confirm, I believe that our goal today in this brainstorm is to get further alignment on the shared goal, but then each board member will be developing an additional goal that supports that. Is that correct?
Correct. So that will be, the big picture is
Yep.
the board's goal, and then board members have an opportunity to develop individual professional development goals or plans to align to how you plan on supporting the overall goal through various learning opportunities, whether it's trainings through the School Boards Association or whatnot. All right, are we ready to get?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're ready, we'll also open it up for conversation, whoever would like to lift something up.
Courtney, you want to kick us off?
Sure. There are bits and pieces of each one that I like. Some of the language sounds a little bit more actionable, which I like, and some of it less actionable. So I don't know where you want me to start.
You can start at the top. And then
Okay, so the top one, I like how understand how to better leverage assets. Like, to me, that sounds more actionable. Like, we are trying to better understand how to do a thing so that we can then do it. I do question the part about the use of staff input. I'm not sure exactly what that would entail.
With that one, we were trying to capture Ms. Rice's idea about experiences that staff may have from other districts or have from other places in their research. We were trying to kind of summarize that part. But of course, we're picking and choosing here. So if that part doesn't land, we can also strike it.
Yeah, I'm just unclear on how we would utilize that.
And keeping on how it feeds back into the strategic plan. Oh, did you want to?
You want me to go to the next one?
Do y'all want to go through all of them, or just stop at each one and have discussions? Which one makes the?
Can you clarify point of clarity about how we're doing? Are you asking to go?
Right, that's how I was raising the question.
Or are we sharing, we're going to piece what we've pieced, like what Ms. Gordon just did, take each board member and piece together what we felt was.
Right, that was the question I was raising.
Okay.
And how did you all?
On each one.
Okay.
So it's more of that. I was
Yeah, I'm
confused
confused
what
about
she
each
said.
one.
So we'll start with the first one and have discussions, and then feed our way through. Is that
That's fine.
okay? So
So I was going to ask, I do actually like the actionable part that you spoke about, but instead of use of staff input, I was really hoping that we would go more for finding out our community partners' availability, like to see, because if we're talking about cost savings and partnerships, we really need to see what they have available, like who can participate, what can they do, how can they help, and also to reach out to see how the communities are available to help. Because we may have all the thoughts in the world, but if the community can't do it, or they don't know it's available, that's a missing piece that could connect a lot of dots.
I think that goes back to the work of the community engagement piece of identifying the partners, bringing them back to figure out what their capacity looks like, and goes where. Sorry.
Right, so for me, it was more about finding the community partners and the availability to see what we could use.
We'll go with Ms. Rice and then Dr. Joe.
Okay, so I think it may have been a piece of misunderstanding of me talking about using staff part. I didn't necessarily mean in this perspective, but I can clarify that later. But the only part within this first one that I am in agreement with is understanding how to better leverage assets of various communities. That part. I have another piece that from the other bullet points that tie into that, but I want to keep that top line as piecing together an overall goal. The other parts, I find a better fit with the other paragraphs, but that's it for me, just the first line.
I'm going to kind of say the opposite. I think it's important that we research how other districts are doing this and are leveraging those partnerships, and then perhaps we can find similar situations here. But I think I agree though that understanding how to better leverage assets of various communities can be the first line, and then we might be able to combine the colored parts of each into the measurable part. I'd like to hear more about what community mapping initiative is. But the only line that gets a little too vague for me actually is that last line about to promote student achievement by December 2026. I wonder if we even need to be more specific than that. Like the goal is that we come together to create the plan in 2026 for how to do this. And so we're doing the professional development all year long to learn about it, and then that way we need to be prepared to have this discussion to create a plan by December 2026.
Any other comments? Do you have a comment?
I don't know about comment of thought, but to go off of, Dr. Jobe just said that in December of 2026, do we really need a full year to kind of see what's out there to come up with a plan?
It's up to the board. I mean, the SMART goal, you have to have a start and end date at some point. So I don't know if it would be appropriate to say by June, given the fact that we're still having discussions, and maybe it's August. So I mean, it's up to the board, but they feel as if the end date should be.
I'd like to hear everybody else's thoughts and maybe staff on how they could.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, what I would say is, I think December is a good time frame because it's work that you will continually do over that time frame. I agree that if you think about setting a June date, that's 6 months. It kind of limits you in terms of being able to achieve the goal. You could certainly achieve it all in 2 months, but at least you've got now a time frame that says, as a board, we want to make sure that we've done all the things necessary to understand how we leverage these things, how we understand what other districts are doing, and do that over that year. And so even though that SMART goal has an end date to it, it doesn't mean that you don't accomplish that before that. You give yourself enough runway to where you have time to work towards this specific board goal. But that would be my recommendation.
So I guess for clarity, are we trying to achieve the goal, or are we trying to set our intentions of the goal?
So I think that's both and also. I think we're trying to start the goal and then figure out ways that we can achieve this goal, or move the needle back to finding ways that we're leveraging partnerships to address academic performances across the district.
So I guess for our first step of trying to see what's available and what's out there, I would hate for us to wait a whole year to do, just to have that information, just to see what's out there, because we are the largest in North Carolina. We can also set precedents of what we want to do and what we have available here. I mean, it's good to reflect and see what others are doing, but they may not be doing things either that we want, that would work for us. So I don't want to wait a whole year just to have a discussion of how we're going to put a plan into action. It's just my thought.
So I think it goes back to what Superintendent Taylor just said. It doesn't mean that we will wait until that date to accomplish it. We're going to do the work. We'll hopefully accomplish it well before then. And to put it in action, I agree with Ms. Cofield around the piece, as you hear me say often, we need to set precedent on what things really look like, because we are the largest district. People need to follow our model and what we're doing to actually make it work and be a little bit more innovative in that. And so to Dr. Jobe's concern around looking at partnerships with other districts. The reason why I chose to take that part out is because, and I think she's right about hearing more about our community mapping initiative that we did. I think that data of our resources, of who we are, is what's most important, because we have different resources than other districts have, and so we can't compare their stuff to ours because we're just different through the resources that we have county-wide, community-wide. We're resource-rich in this county, and our resources will definitely look different than other counties within our state to even compare them to.
So I think it depends on how narrowly we're going to define this. Like, if we're just talking about finding community resources that we can partner with and opening up, then yes, it probably would not take a year, it probably, but if we're really going to do a deep dive into, like, sorry, Ms. Gordon was saying, with the community and schools model, and like be able to even develop more of a framework of how we enter into these partnerships, how we, so it's not just piecemeal, who jumps forward, who, who's the first to raise their hand, or having stuff that abruptly starts and ends. But if we want to start like making this more something that is intentional and is part of the school life all the time, then I think then it probably would absolutely take a year.
And this should build back off of the conversation with the school improvement plans by doing deep dives into those, figuring out, where you can support it, how does the school support that, versus this looking at something that's totally separate. So I want to make sure that we circle back to fleshing out this first part. So I think there's, Ms. Wow.
I was just thinking, do we want to just shift to the second one and pick out pieces there that you're like, we really want to include this component?
Yes.
Or strike this part?
That works.
Yeah.
You know, like, sure.
So I underlined the piece where it says in bullet number 2, increase our understanding of assets available. But then what? To me, that's not really action. That doesn't lead to an action, which is different from the first one because it says to understand how to better leverage. The action is to leverage those assets. So I would recommend not using the first line in the second bullet. I do like the utilizing the community mapping initiative. I do like that. That speaks to what we're already doing and utilizing what we're already doing to help us achieve our goal. And then I also underlined to explore resources. That's actionable.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Question for you. Do you think it's important to understand the assets themselves in order to understand how to better leverage them? Like, should we combine those two sentences and say that we need to better understand the assets available and how to leverage them, or something much more eloquent than that was?
That makes sense because at this point, I don't think we understand.
No.
We understand the assets.
Dr. Ng, did you have a?
I think sequence-wise, I think the second bullet probably should go before the first bullet,
Yeah.
don't you think?
Yes.
Right.
And in the end, we just need like one statement. We don't need like all of them or anything like that.
We understand.
So it sounds like you're saying increase understanding of assets that are available and how to leverage those.
Yes.
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
so we like both of that combined?
Yes.
Okay. And I don't know if everyone would be okay with that part of the statement, and then we can move to the colored part.
Everyone in agreement, in alignment with that? Comment, Ms. Rice, you look like you're trying to say something.
No, I think we're there. That's why I was saying, going through bullet by bullet, it's like piecing the parts. So for me, it's like by December 2026, increase our understanding of assets available in various community to understand how to better leverage the assets of the various communities and receive professional development on the communities in the schools-based model. So it's like, it's marking out like what we're doing of pieces that we don't need. What we're looking for is in all three. So I'm just trying to make sure we're capturing the pieces that we want out of the three,
Right.
where it
So
makes
we're-
sense in a full sentence. That's
Right, and so I want to make sure we're still going by the process by sticking with two, making sure that everyone has voiced their concerns or their piece about it, and then to the third, so we can get to the big picture of mapping them all together.
Okay, so if I have to share my part then of bullet 2, it's keeping the first line and the second line down to, yeah, it's keeping the first and the second line. Actually, it's that whole thing is almost brief, but just, it's definitely keeping the first and second line.
So would it sound like, something like, by December 2026, we want to receive professional development in order to increase our understanding of assets available in various communities and how to better leverage those assets?
Sounds like it's
Using our community.
Okay,
mapping
and then what are we using? The only thing we have to
Right.
decide on then is just this little colored part. But,
that, how does that sound? Beth, did you have your?
I'm good, actually, thank you, though.
to increase, yeah.
Can I know we haven't moved on to the third one yet, but I want to provide a point of clarity around communities in schools and community schools. There are two totally different things. Communities in schools is a national organization. So, we talk about being innovative and, leading the way. That is not what I meant
Right.
when I made my comment. I am speaking about community schools, which look very different from school to school. It is like the community hub, and you are utilizing the assets and looking at the needs of a community. So my community over in Southeast Raleigh is going to look different from a community in Apex. So I just want to provide that point of clarity.
Again, these are just samples, so the part in the colored part here, you guys could not even use any of that. This is what you want it to be.
Okay, I was just,
Yeah.
And I believe Dr. Alford Keith has summarized what's been said from taking the 3 bullet points there and adopting or capturing the conversation to turn what's written on the far right side into a SMART goal.
By December 2026, receive professional development to increase understanding of assets available in various communities and how to better leverage those assets by, right? So that's a part that we're still, it's like, what would be the action that you would take in that professional development? And you're saying community schools, lowercase c, lowercase n, as one of the topics of professional learning. Community mapping initiative could be another.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would even say, like that first one, where we're talking about by researching effective cost-saving partnerships. By researching effective cost-saving partnerships, I don't know, in regard to community schools in other districts and through, I'm not sure. I know I'm getting really wordy.
I'm with you with the cost savings piece, but not necessarily other districts, but with cost savings partnerships, because we're talking about partnerships within our community mapping initiative, because we may find cost savings within our partners, and that's because that's why we're partnering with, that's how we save cost, by utilizing our community partners. So with utilizing the community mapping initiative for the development of a community schools model.
I have something similar. So, but better leverage those assets by researching effective cost-saving partnerships through the community mapping initiative and various models for community schools. Lowercase c, lowercase n. right, opening up to broad community models.
Dr. Joe? I
Yeah.
see where it says.
I just, okay. No, I think that's actually good. I just want to make sure we're not nailing ourselves to the community schools model. Like, that might not be what we end up with at the end of all of this professional development. It might be something different compared to what our options are and everything. So, but I think that basically lifting up the community schools model is a good idea. And then, yeah, okay.
Can she read the last sentence, the last part of it?
Sure.
To me,
Actually, I
just the
think
last
I'll read
part.
it in full, and you all can see. By December 2026, receive professional development to increase understanding of assets available in various communities and how to better leverage those assets by researching effective cost savings partnerships through the Community Mapping Initiative and various models for community schools.
Because the researching piece is the professional development piece, right? That we're
Yeah.
receiving.
That's right.
This will only work when all of us commit to it. The goal can't be 4 members choose and 5 does something different. This is the only way this will be successful is we all have to commit to doing the research, doing the work, to to making this come into become a SMART goal. Sorry, my words aren't working today. Dr. Joe.
2 things. One, I was just going to say, this is the other reason why I think it might take till December, because there are also some good conferences and stuff that, and some of them are going to be over the summer and in the fall.
Right.
But the other is, do we still need that last point, though, that I was talking about before, saying what our ultimate goal is to make a future plan, or is this enough? Like, how do we know, I guess measurable, how do we know we've succeeded at doing this?
It'll be the tangible.
Right, what's the tangible thing in the end?
Well, we have 2 minutes left of this.
Is that what the committee's for?
Segue that the committee can take.
Absolutely, that's what the committee would be for,
Right.
then they can talk about the specific things that are necessary to accomplish the goals.
Correct. So we'll go Ms. Caulfield, Ms. Edmonds, and then Vice Chair.
So I just had, I was thinking about the last part of that sentence, various models for community. Did we want to add in our schools to get away from what you were saying before? So it's not it's just basically saying each one is individual. Just a little play on the words.
I think so. Those would see that.
I'm sorry.
I mean, I was saying, yeah, I think so. It goes with our,
So just add in our schools.
that's our people.
Ms. Edmonds.
So I know there's a committee for this work. Do you have, do we know yet, will there be a formal reporting in structure, or is that up for the committee to determine?
That will be up to the committee to determine that piece. I just want to make sure that the board has gotten it to a good place so then the committee can discuss this at the January 16th meeting. Is that 13th? 13th meeting at 1 o'clock. And it's on your board calendar. That'll go out in the mail this week.
Can you read that again? Because I feel like we're getting really long-winded, and we have too much there, and it's starting to, from my perspective, like, we could edit it down a lot and still have a really important goal. Like, I think we're trying to name everything and stick it in there versus having a broader goal and then letting the committee fill in how we achieve, maybe. Can you just read it?
Yep. By December 2026, receive professional development to increase understanding of assets available in various communities and how to better leverage those assets by researching effective cost savings partnerships through the Community Mapping Initiative and various models for community in our schools.
I don't like the in our schools part. Community schools is it's a model. Like, it's a holistic approach to everything in a school. community in our school, like that's what we have the issue with. That's what we have a problem with, not understanding the community in our schools. So I think adding in our schools defeats the purpose. I also think now that you read it, the beginning where you say receive professional development, does that repeat itself in the?
I think it does. Yeah, that was the first redundancy that I heard, is that we don't necessarily need to receive professional development too when we have 5 researching. So it's like, which would resonate with you more? Are you thinking of it as seek out professional development to attend, or research and share information?
Ms. Gordon, did you want to?
I like the second part better, because it's direct.
What else were you going to say, Mr. Hershey?
So I would still cut out like a lot, because I feel like if we say the goal is to increase understanding of assets available in various communities and how to better leverage those assets, we need to then define reason why to save money, and then period. And then all those other things are steps that we are going to take to do it. I mean, I can't understand that entire sentence. I mean, it's hard. The chair's in the way, so it's hard for me to read it. But it is long, and we're kind of, versus like, here's our end actionable, here's what we will have completed on December. I don't know what that is in that
We
statement.
haven't further got there.
I know, but-
The committee is going to
Right, but-
tighten this up. Let me finish. The committee's going to tighten this up, work through it, and then flesh all the ideas that we have. So it's like we're throwing everything at the wall to get it some
Okay.
structure, and then they will come through and
I got you.
take the piece and connect the dots. I hear that.
Yeah, I got you.
Ms. Rice and then Dr. Joe.
Really quickly, since we're in that same vein, I hear you, Mr. Hershey. So is it possible you can say by the December 2026, increase the understanding of assets in our community mapping initiative? Because that's the assets is within the community mapping initiative, which is of the people. So, and then better leverage those assets by researching effective cost-saving partnerships through. So that's just my thought, since we took the time to gather all these people in community. And remember, the community mapping initiative does not end just because it started. We constantly need to keep feeding people into the community mapping initiative and adding more people within our community, because we need to constantly share with them where they need to go. It still needs to remain on the website. It still needs to be a space where people feel like they have something to offer us as an asset in the district that is that nonprofit 501c3. They still should be able to share who they are, because organizations close and erect, what am I saying, in a cycle, right? So that's just a thought.
We have 4 more minutes of this discussion, and again, it's going to the committee, and that committee will meet on the 13th at 1 o'clock. And we're just trying to it's like throwing the spaghetti noodle at the wall to see what sticks, and the committee will take it from there. Dr. Joe.
I want to make sure we put student achievement back in there. We kind of dropped that phrase while we were parsing this all out. And then, yeah, I think probably we will end up somewhere closer to what Mr. Hershey was saying before, and then move some of it into, here are suggestions of possible professional development you could do.
I was going to circle back to the question of the measure and how we've done it. I think what Ms. Rice said in response to Mr. Hershey can be that answered, which is, we looked at the map, this is how many partners we had on it, and these are the ways that they were already engaging with schools. And then in December next 2026, we have this many more partners and they're engaging this many more ways, right? And then you can measure your increase in both of those things. So more partners available, more partners also involved with schools in those ways.
Final comments? Ms. Rice?
Really final comment, with that said around engagement, I think that it's very important, Dr. Robinson, if Dr. Sturdivant is a part of that conversation and possible help with us around this engagement, this community piece, and leverage the great partnerships that she's done throughout the year and things of that nature. So I would hope that she could be included in this piece that we're doing to yield instrumental in it.
So I just want to level set here as well by making sure that, this goal, once it's developed, does not just sit on the shelf and go from there, that we're working this in conjunction with the school at the strategic plan, and everything is building. And that we can check in and say, as a board, we've been able to do this is how it's helping, and going from there. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone's mindful of, it's not just going to a committee for the committee to do all the work and then it stays on committee. This is a board goal, which was discussed at our retreat. And so, we talked about being innovative. We heard from Ramona Powers that no other board has developed a SMART goal around strategic planning. So we're being innovative, we're leading the way, and so we just got to commit to that and keep moving the work forward. So I think this is in a better place than we were on last week.
Yes.
So the committee will take it from there. And thank you all for the discussion, for helping us flesh these ideas out. And we will move to our strategic plan, priority number 2, student disposition and well-being, which was on our retreat agenda that Mother Nature did not allow us to fully fulfill. So Dr. Robinson, Dr. Hill, Michelle Woodson, Dr. McMillan, and Dr. Leanne will join us at the table.
Thank you, Board Chair Swanson. This afternoon, we're going to follow up with the priority 2. Please just have a seat. I tell you what I'm going to do. I know.
Yeah, we haven't had one yet.
This afternoon, we're going to follow up with priority 2, student disposition and well-being. We have several presenters that are going to be able to provide information and answer any clarifying questions that you guys may have. But at the same time, we want to make sure that everyone is informed. So when we think about student disposition and well-being, we talk about Goal 4 and Goal 5. And Goal 4 deals with the attendance, and then Goal 5 definitely deals with the student well-being. And so who is going to walk you through this presentation today is going to be Dr. Leanne Alford-Keith. I will not do the slides in the beginning, as we always ground ourselves in the work of our strategic plan. We know that we have 3 priorities, 7 goals, 4 aims, and 3 priorities, 7 goals, 4 pillars, and 20 aims. And so we consistently do that all the time, but because of the time that's been allocated for this portion of the agenda, we're going to go ahead and forego that, and we're going to jump right into the presentation so that you guys have time to ask clarifying questions. So Dr. Leanne Alford-Keith, I'm going to pass it over to you, and you can go ahead and start with priority 2.
Thank you, everyone. So as you see here, we are looking at priority 2, behavioral health. In this deep dive, as Dr. Robinson was saying, we have done several of those so far this year. We're excited to bring this one to you here today. This is how we defined behavioral health when we were developing the plan in May 2023. As you can see here, the priorities represent the overall outcome. The outcome that we want to see is positive student dispositions and well-being, but the definition includes staff, and that was an important choice on the part of the board because we know that the staff behavioral health is also really important to the student behavioral health. So you can see how it is defined here. And our deep dive today is going to focus mostly on measuring progress towards our goals. The first goal is Goal 4, which is about attendance and ensuring that 95% of all students are in attendance at least 95% of their days in membership, and eliminating any disparities that we see there by race, ethnicity, gender, and socioeconomic status. And so we're going to look here in the attendance rates in comparison of the last 3 years that we've been in the strategic plan. You do see represented here what is the goal, which is the top line, that 95% of days, and then you also see chronic absenteeism reported, because that is what is a part of our different accountability models, and several of our internal processes is addressing those highest need students who are chronically absent at 90%. Overall, the trends are fairly flat, but I will invite either Assistant Superintendent Woodson or Dr. Hill or Dr. McMillan to share any other thoughts that you have about these trends before we start digging into what we're doing about it, because I know that's what you really want to know.
I'd just add as a little bit by way of additional context, if we take this back even further to pre-pandemic, attendance rates here in Wake and really nationally for schools are still much higher than they were pre-pandemic. We saw a pretty big spike during that time, and it has settled back down, but it has not settled back down all the way to anything like what we had prior to 2020. The state's chronic absenteeism rate is up in the 20s, so we're doing a little bit better than the state is as a whole, but it is still proving to be a pretty stubborn problem for us to get a handle on.
Any questions?
All right, here it is. You see it by a group. This is each group in last school year in 24-25, meeting that goal of 95%. As you can see, there is predictability there, as we see with other data points as well. We are actively working against that. We'll talk about some of those strategies in a second, but I will note that the gaps are not as wide as they are on some of our other goals.
Questions? Oh, Ms. Rice.
So with this, to make sure I'm looking at this correctly, students attending 95% of days, this is the amount of students who actually do attend school that we're looking at. And with that said, on the opposite end of the spectrum, have we collected the data of the reasons that when students have not attended school? Do we have that data that'll be shared today as well?
We have some information.
We have some information. Okay, all right.
Yeah, but to your point, better record keeping is a part of one of our goals that we.
Oh, okay,
as well. So
okay.
we'll talk about that in the next slide.
Okay.
We have information that shows the academic achievement breakdown of those who have attended, like, basically, yes, thank you, Ms. Gordon said, how does it correlate?
Yeah,
Academic success, like, can we break that down?
Yeah, I think the last time we looked at that was when we were doing the goal-setting process for the current strategic plan, and we've looked at it even 8 to 10 years prior to that, but it's basically a linear process. The more schools you miss, the worse you do, and it pretty much just follows a stair-step pattern. If you look at more and more in attendance results in more and more non-proficiency, more and more non-growth. It's a pretty clear linear relationship.
But how are we, if the attendance rate isn't changing, how are we growing in some areas?
The attendance rate isn't changing. Just processing your question, how are we growing in some areas? Well, it's changing a little. It's getting a little better. And if you recall, last year our proficiency rate went up only about 0.2 of a point. And it also varies by subgroup, as you can see, because we have variance in attendance here. That's going to affect that. And then also the number of people you have in each of these groups is not equal as well. So one of these groups might jump up quite a bit, like multiracial students, but if it's only 4% of the students in the district, you're not going to see that borne out in any kind of district-level proficiency rates.
Ms. Rice, share us.
So is the same, I know we're talking about attendance and we're talking about students, but is the same can be said for staff and in the correlation of the student achievement? I know we learned a lot about that in research at our SBA, that when teachers are not in school, students don't perform at better rates, and so that attendance rate can also correlate with students who possibly, when we have such huge vacancies and teachers are not in school, students may tend to wonder, why do we need to be in that class during that time if there's not attendance? So just wondering, all these correlations have some effects on student achievement.
Yep. I'm writing down to follow up. We have been looking at staff attendance this year. I don't have it in this presentation, but I have I am writing to follow up because it was a part of our earlier conversations in operational effectiveness as well, so we can circle back to that.
Dr.
I received a presentation by the Heritage High School for their ramp application on this very issue and what their action steps are. So I'm just curious to find out what we can do to change these statistics, So.
Asking for the next one. Perfect. I'll let you take that.
Well, good afternoon. I'm glad to spend some time with you all this morning, or this afternoon, forgive me. And I will say I'm certainly going to address many of your questions here. I do have my amazing team who is here with me today to make sure that they can address any other questions that you have. But we certainly want to think about what some of those strategic responses might be. And they begin with, Ms. Rice, to your point, what are some of the systems and infrastructure that we can build to make sure we're doing a better job of capturing the data? So the reality is that we want to refine our record keeping and reporting processes to make sure that data is accurate. And as we transitioned into Infinite Campus, we had some things we needed to level set on, make sure we're taking attendance at a similar time every day, those kinds of things, so that the data is accurate as we're looking at that. We also want to make sure we have standard protocols, updating guidance to provide every school with a consistent evidence-based roadmap around that intervention process. We also had an opportunity this past year to have AttendanceWorks come through and do a diagnostic with us as a district to kind of just look at what our infrastructure is around attendance. And we want to make sure that we're moving towards implementing some of those core recommendations. And some of those things are inclusive of problem solving around what are the root causes behind the attendance challenge, right? Why is it that the students are not interested in coming or families are not sending them? There's a variety of things. Depends on the student, depends on the school, maybe depends on the circumstance, but really digging into what those root causes are. There's no doubt we need to empower our school teams. To your point around Heritage, that's exactly the kind of work we want to see happening, where schools are looking at their data and problem solving. What do I need to do to become preventative? We're going to talk a little bit more about preventative action, but that's exactly the kind of work we want to see happen. And we want to train those school teams to make sure that they are being preventative in that way. And we want to equip them with some strategies that will help them become more preventative rather than just reacting. If students are not there, I'm going to react to it. I want to get in front of that. And then ultimately, we really want to think about shifting that with our family engagement, right? How can we shift our communication style to be more inclusive and supportive with parents? We changed the letters, for example, that we send out at 3, 6, and 9. Is that right? 3, 6, 9, 10 days. I'm going to say that.
3, 6, and 10.
Thank you. 3, 6, and 10 days, because we want to be in partnership with families. We want to align. We certainly want to let them know that we're seeing that their students are not attending, but we also want to work together with them. And that we want to collaboratively work together to understand and resolve any of those challenges that might impact their regular attendance. So I do think it is a different approach in how we're going to make changes as we go forward. So we're going to move from attendance, if everybody's good with that, into, oh, yeah, go ahead.
I brought this up at our retreat. Infinite Campus, real-time notifications to parents, possible, because if you go into a class and you get marked absent, you're 5 minutes late or whatever, hey, your parent can, or a family member can get on your rear end, where are you? Because we don't find out. I do not like that we have our system where you don't find out, where you get a call at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I have never liked that about Wake County Public School System.
Is that a Wake County thing or a DCI thing?
And I know that there's some features in Infinite Campus that you can give that utilization of how often you want those notifications to go out. And so that's something that we need to explore of how often and how timely we want those notifications to go out to parents. But we can set that up to have that to roll out.
So just to add to that, there is an ability within Infinite Campus to send notification based on the period attendance, homeroom attendance, and all that. We currently use School Messenger to do that. And that's what we have done in the Power School. We are looking at it right now, the teacher said, to really see what we can do. So the team is investigating that whole functionality.
Well, two things. I just wanted to say, like, to your point, Mr. Hershey, I know Power School used to send little notifications if you set it up that way. So you can find out, like, where your kid is and what they're doing. But I'm not sure about Infinite Camps because I came in after that. I wanted to know, as far as the attendance works, and you said the diagnostic reports, can we get a copy of that to see that? And do we ever put that information out? Like, I think if we want to partner with our parents and we let them see, look, this is how many absences we're seeing. This isn't just your kid had a tummy ache, didn't come in, or they had a doctor's appointment, we just didn't take you back. Like, look how much attendance issues are happening in our schools. So when you see and hear all this stuff that's happening in your school, no, look at this report, see how many kids are not there. But I think it's also important to put in there with teacher attendance, especially after, post-COVID. You hear that a lot. And when you have subs in your class, often, it actually does disrupt learning. But then it also will help us understand, is there something bigger that we need to look at that our teachers are struggling with, that they're not in class all the time? So I think it's kind of like a twofold answer there. And that's it. I just wanted to know, and also if we, what time frame do we see these reports?
I think I'd be a little leery of the teacher reports because I don't think that's something we can address as a board. If teachers report to the superintendent, so if there's something that needs to be discussed, the superintendent has a teacher advisory committee that could go through. But I also think we have to realize teachers are human beings as well. Teachers have mental health needs that they need to address. They have concerns. They have lives outside of the classroom.
To be clear, that was two separate.
I get you, but I want to finish because I want to respond to that. As one of 3 teachers sitting at this table, I don't think we need to start trying to please teachers when we are in a moment where we don't have enough teachers in this as a whole. So I think we have to look at this at a holistic approach. If we want our students to be well, we have to do what's best for students, but we also have to do what's best for teachers as well, which is treating teachers as professionals. And so I would not be open to a report that, I just would not be open to that report, and I'm just one vote.
So I wasn't saying that was two separate thoughts. If the parents were able to see the attendance in that school, they understand how important it is in that school. A separate thought, if we could understand if our teachers are absent, is there something internally that we need to do to help our teachers with that?
So
I don't want to report back to public, look, your teacher's been absent 10 times.
No, we have policy that says, if teachers have been, if we have a class that is out for a week or so, there's policies for us to be transparent about that. But I think that's something that's in school improvement plans that we can keep diving through. If there's opportunities for those conversations to take place, I think that would go through area superintendents to look through the school improvement plans to see if there's a concern at the school level and what the school community is doing to try to resolve that. So that's just my, Dr. Taylor.
So, Mr. Chair, speaking of the teacher attendance, that is something that I've talked with principals about at principal leadership. And so they're well aware of what that is. When we had the conversation about student attendance, I also said to them that they need to be able to look, know, and understand what teacher attendance is in their buildings, and that is where they have those conversations. And so, it is about making sure we treat them as professionals, but also help them to recognize the importance of their attendance. So we have had those conversations with them about teacher attendance in conjunction with student attendance. And I'll just throw in today that Ms. Edmonds can answer the question about 720. You remember that? And so in our meeting today, they talked about the number of days that kids actually have for instruction from kindergarten through 3rd grade. So that's 720 days. That is all the time that we have to do instruction. And so that's just an additional way to share with parents that, if your kids are not here, you don't have good attendance, there's a finite amount of time that we have.
I just wanted to lift up the topic of substitutes. There's, teacher absences for illness or personal obligations. There's that. I think the larger concern, and I know that we do better in Wake County because of our supplements and because of some of the other things that we offer, like reinstating master's pay, et cetera. But for a teacher vacancy, for a position that we struggle to fill, and when you're talking about a long-term sub, I just want us to be mindful when we throw around the word sub, that those are really two different things, because I think that's really important, because I know the long-term sub, when you can't fill a position, that's a whole different animal that is really troubling for all of us, and is not related to somebody missing a day, a week, for whatever. Thank you.
In reference to slide number 9 and number 10, I have lots of thoughts on the attendance rates and why, but I think one of my questions is like what goals have been made to improve the conditions that lead to these attendance rates? And then secondly, I certainly appreciate the approach, like the district approach and the school support approach that you all are planning to provide support to, make improvement around attendance. But I just want to lift up that a lot of times when we talk about attendance, we talk about it as this one lane thing, when we really need to be talking about the conditions that move it. A lot of times we are seeing the attendance rates because parents don't feel welcomed in their schools. They don't feel the culture in their school. So they don't deem it important. It's fine if you miss a day or two. The same thing on the student side. When a student loves to come to school, they're gonna bug you to make sure you get them there. So I think like looking at it in a lens of where are we making sure that we are providing the conditions that are really pulling our families and our students in. And then understanding that looking at these numbers, you look at our English learners, we just had a whole bunch of ICE raids, which is definitely going to affect this, and it's probably going to affect it for a long time. So like understanding those conditions and the dispositions that families have in different communities around the importance of being at school and the importance of feeling welcomed and, feeling really appreciated and a part of that school community.
We good? You were a perfect segue into where we're going next. So as we're talking about the next priority, student dispositions and well-being, we certainly want to think about that. Our North Star is making sure that we have 90% of our students that will master those core social emotional competencies. That it's not just a feel-good goal, right? That we are really talking about tracking specific skills like self-management and responsible decision-making as indicators of student success. We want to make sure that we're thinking about prioritizing the predictability and equitable access, to your point, and that these are critical components of this work in ensuring that students, their race, their gender, their socioeconomic status does not predict their outcomes, right? We want to make sure that everyone has opportunity, and we are building a system where every student receives the same high-quality behavioral health support, which I think is the culture and climate you're speaking to, regardless of which school that they attend. And so we want to think about that through these specific competencies of self-management, self-awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making as a toolkit, really, that helps to move that work forward. So we're going to move today to talk a little bit further about that. I think, Leanne, you were picking up here.
Yes. So we have not had a chance to revisit how we measure those SEL competencies. So in setting that goal, we haven't had a chance to talk about where those measures come from, which is the BIMAS Universal Screener. So I thought in having that chance today to like dig deeply into how is that goal measured would be something that would benefit everyone. So we did invite Dr. Mary Whitehouse, who is the expert on that SEL competencies screener, to come and share how it's measured with all of you.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Just as a reminder, when we're talking about a universal screener, we are talking about a measure in which we collect data on all or as many students as possible to get a sense, number one, of how our instructional practice is impacting student outcomes, but then also to identify students who might need some level of additional support, either because they haven't acquired the skills yet, or maybe they need some enrichment to extend those skills. So we're using this as a tool to collect data on all of our students around these social emotional competencies. And why? Well, it is the starting place for intervention. When you have a fever, that's an indicator that something's going on. What is that about, right? And so a screener helps us start to figure out those things. It can pinpoint places where there might be an issue that we need to dig into and address. So if we identify individual students who might need some additional intervention, that gets us there sooner, hopefully, than waiting until we have these more reactive sources of behavior data, such as major and minor behavior referrals, suspension data, all of those kinds of sources of data. That shows us that the problem has already occurred. And oftentimes, when we back up from that one incident, we might see a pattern that has led to that point where we could have intervened earlier if we'd known that there was an issue. So a screener helps us get to that place of figuring out sooner, hopefully, so that we can intervene before a problem becomes a bigger concern. We also know that for students who have participated in this process, because they are getting the right amount of support at the time that they need it, they tend to have higher academic performance and demonstrate those SEL skills. Their attitudes tend to be better, and they tend to have more positive social behaviors. They also tend to have fewer conduct problems. They tend to be involved in less substance use, and they tend to have lower rates of emotional distress. Obviously, what we do for everybody is not going to work for everybody, but to the extent that we can make sure that what we are doing is working for most students and then providing the support that is needed beyond that, that is the goal for this work. So yeah, we're using this as a preventative to try to support our students in a more proactive way. This gets to some of the conversation that we just had around attendance as well. We know that optimal brain development requires these things, some of which we have little to no control or influence over. But when we start talking about emotional well-being, social relationships, safety and belonging, cultural well-being, how are we creating the conditions to where our schools are fostering those spaces so that those things are more likely to occur? And that is a place where we do have more control and influence. This slide and the next are just some data that have come from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, a couple years old at this point, but there are a number of high school students across the country who have reported feeling some internal stress around a lot of things, often related to sadness, worry, feeling like they don't belong. And then this data, and I know that you all have access to these slides so you can see it a little more closely, about the sense of belongingness as it relates to school. And what is the school experience like for these high schoolers who have responded to these surveys? And so there are a lot of students who are not feeling supported by their school environments, which again, could be a reason for the attendance piece, but it could also really impact how they are doing just overall in life, because they spend so much of their time in school if they are coming to school. So yeah, what questions can I answer that doesn't talk specifically about the measure itself, but what questions can I answer either about the measure or how we do this?
We'll start with Ms. Rice, Ms. Gordon, and then Dr. Gibb.
Very quickly for me, as I have heard from multiple students, not only just in my district, but throughout the county, students as a whole, based off because I'm glad you showed the slide. And I saw in earlier slides, 14, where we talked about higher academic performance and things of that nature. I don't want us to lose sight. I really wanted to know, what are we doing to help students more around the 4 and 10 feeling, experience, persistence, sadness, and hopelessness. These same students can still perform very well, but are experiencing these emotions. What are we doing as a district to provide skills and tools for them to use in a daily cultural space to feel better? Because even in an interview I just did that a student asked of me yesterday, they don't get what they feel like they need in skills of training. They indicated they get a training or a video that we share once a year, and that's fantastic, but students are asking for skills to help them cope with these thoughts and feelings that they have, but they yet still are high performers. So what are we doing around that?
So I will begin this conversation and certainly can turn it over to some folks on my team that can certainly add to. We do have a district-wide curriculum that is called Second Step that is available K through 12 at this point in time. And in that curriculum, we do address these competencies, right? Self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, those kinds of things. It helps with how do I goal set, right? How do I collaborate effectively? It's really those soft skills that you've talked about and articulated, so that they can become stronger at those kinds of skills as they're continuing to grow in their academic career as well. That is available. Teachers are teaching that curricula in a large majority of our schools, and we are expanding that and monitoring the implementation of that at this point in time. There is training for staff with regards to that as well. But that is a strategy that we have. We are also working hard, and we'll talk about this at an upcoming Student Achievement Committee meeting, to talk about how are we making sure that the school environment, from the classroom, beginning in the classroom environment, as well as the school-wide environment, is explicitly taught. What are those expectations? How is a student to monitor themselves and engage in the environment in that way? And then also making sure that that is in partnership with the Second Step curriculum as we kind of move forward.
Chair, I'm sorry, follow up. I heard you. I'm thankful of hearing about the Second Step and what you talked about, the soft skills, but I'm more looking for the emotional piece. The goal setting and all that stuff is fantastic. You have a lot of students that can do that. They can do that part. I'm asking more about the emotional part with students. What tools or programming are we providing for them to handle the emotional regulation? Not, this is how you communicate, this is how you do that. It's about, I communicate well, I do all of those things well, I'm an honor student, I'm this, I'm that, but I'm struggling mentally, I'm struggling on the inside as I keep those things together. What tools are we giving students for the emotional part?
So I think that is responded to in a tiered response. If we have students who are struggling, who are kind of beyond that core level, then if you need additional support, whether it be through a school counselor, through mental health services, I think that's exactly where we engage with our student support services staff to assess where that student is, determine where their challenge might lie, and then what kind of resources might that school provide. It could be a small group. The counselor might have 4 or 5 students who have similar challenges around grief, as an example, and they might do a small group related to grief. That might be something that they could address there in the school setting. If that's an individualized challenge that a student has with mental health supports, they can definitely either make a referral or connect them to possibly teletherapy. There's a variety of things that we're doing right now in schools, school-based mental health opportunities, to be able to give them one-on-one support that will also support them there.
I promise, final follow-up, promise, I promise. how do students recognize that they need to ask for the emotional help? I hear you, but what I'm trying to share or try to get a better perspective, and you may have to share with me later, what tools are students offered to be able to recognize when they are overwhelmed, and what is the culture we've set for them to know how to go ask for the support? I heard you tell me we have it, but what have we taught, or how have we taught our students to recognize when they need to go ask for it?
So you're looking for a self-assessment of some sort, is that correct? So a student can self-assess that they need that.
Yeah, how do they, what tools have we provided them to recognize when they need to go ask for help?
I don't know, that is certainly something we can dig in and investigate further.
That's fair.
Absolutely.
I was going to add to the conversation in addition to the self-assessment and going back to your point in regards to making sure that we are also equipping our staff members and our teachers with skill sets to also help recognize when we may have students in distress, so that we are forging that relationship, or positive student-teacher relationship, so that students know that there may be multiple adults in the building that they can turn to when there is distress. And so we have several professional learning opportunities from our CAS department where teachers can engage in signs to look for, not necessarily diagnosing students, but signs to look for if students seem to be in some form of distress, as well as who they can reach out to, they being teachers, who they may reach out to from our CAS department for additional support.
So
If I may.
I was going to add before we talk about using
I really was going to talk about that, but I will. I will talk about that, but I would like to also add, as Ms. Rice is saying, how do we teach about the emotional stuff? What I want the board and everyone to understand is social, emotional learning skills are the root of helping our kids having better mental health, right? So if you think about a plant needs fertile soil. The fertile soil is having strong SDL competencies. If I'm more self-aware, if I can manage my behavior, if I can regulate my behavior, if I can do all those things, and they are strong, I have better mental health outcomes, right? And that's what we take up then with the supports that we have for students, as has been pointed out. The other thing, yes, we do provide it's required for our CAS staff, but it's also open to all, staff in Wake County. Because we recognize that if those people who work closely with our youth are able to understand and recognize the signs and symptoms of a student in distress, they're not mental health therapists, but recognizing the signs and symptoms of a student in distress and can provide that first aid, right, in terms of calming a student. That's an important mention. So what we try to do is really to create a web and a net of support for students. It's not just programming, right, but it's also what are those other supports that we build around students that help them. Everybody has the skills and competencies, the knowledge and the awareness, and how to get to the support and the services that we need for our students.
And I'd like to add to Board Member Bryce, we talked in previous meetings about the Youth Mental Health Advisory Group, and now it's in its second year. This is a very small tool, but it's still important. Last year, that group developed the posters that we put up in all the schools, recognizing the importance of talking to someone if you have any kind of struggle. So they're appropriate for K through 12, and we have those now available. If they're not in a school, if you go to a school and you don't see them, let the principal know to reach out to me. We can get copies for them so they can put back up. But the students brought that idea to us about this is something that we can post throughout the school, reminding students that if you need something, it has on there some quick facts about mental health, that's age appropriate, and then it also has who you can go to in the school, as well as the 988 number and Alliance Health information, phone numbers for students in middle and high school. But we're starting to help kind of spread the word to students, destigmatize mental health, and make it a normal conversation to have. And so that's something we just started last school year. Ms. Gordon?
My question is around the social emotion, the social emotional screener. Is that the same as the BIMS?
BIMS. It is the BIMS.
It is the BIMS.
Yes,
Okay.
BIMS is the tool that we are using.
Okay, okay. Can you tell me what BIMS stands for?
I don't even know if I can today. I can't. It's gone.
It is not an acronym in the sense, because the tool is the BIMOS 2, so they've already gone away from what the acronym was, such that its name is BIMOS, if that makes sense.
The Behavior Intervention Monitoring Assessment System.
Okay. Follow up, please. Is that probably about 2 years ago, I attended, as a parent, I attended a forum that you hosted. And we talked about, is this the tool that was presented as a part of the equity framework? Basically, how long have we been using this tool? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we piloted it in 2019. We had a second grouping of schools ready to go and screen, and then March of 2020 happened, so we pushed pause. And then we came back and have been onboarding groups of schools since the fall of 2021. So we are up to 164 schools are using this right now, with the last big group coming on board in the spring.
And this,
We'll have everybody on board by June of 2020.
that's what I'm getting at. So, and this is the tool that the teachers use, and if I remember correctly, it's it's very subjective.
It is. It is and it's not. So it is, how often did you observe these behaviors in this student over the course of the past week? And so there's 34 questions. Teachers go in, and then there is a key for how often is rarely, how often is sometimes, how often is often. And so for teachers to think about how often did I see this or not over the course of the past week for this student. So it is a snapshot. It is teacher observation. It does have a lot of really great statistics around reliability and validity, and it has just been renormed, and they're working on the 3rd edition. But yes, currently we are only using the teacher form. There is a parent form and a student form.
I saw it.
Yeah, we're going to get to that.
I know. That's what I'm trying not to ask too many questions.
Yeah, we're going to get there.
Is there any way that we can have a copy of the screener?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Should we just, and then I have Ms. Bevins and then Dr.
Well, I have questions about how you chose this particular tool, but let's not. But also, what happens if a student is screened and needs significant intervention, and the school system is not able to provide it, and the parents are not able to either? What do we have to offer? Because unfortunately, mental health is not treated the same as physical health by insurance and all that. So
this is often where we tap into Alliance and our other community providers. This is where we can tap into school-based mental health and the partnerships that have been established there.
okay.
Thank you. Ms. Woodson, you said that the second step curriculum, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's not everywhere. It's not in every school or necessarily in every classroom. Can you tell me why that is, or how does it work?
I think there's a level of implementation that we're in the middle of right now, but it is available for everyone, and we are in the midst of trying to roll it out to make sure that every classroom has it available. It has been shared and trained to all schools, and at the high school level in particular, we just started, that was actually not even available at the high school level. They wrote it for us, So that, we did it with ninth graders last year, that's correct? And so we're just in the midst of moving that up per grade level as we're moving forward. But just as we're moving through that implementation, we're just trying to make sure that every school has access and every classroom has access.
Great, thank you.
Dr.
Thank you. I was just thinking, you already answered some of it, but I think, we're talking about leveraging community resources or community partners, and this is a classic example of where we need to leverage partnerships with the community, where even within your own community, like your church community or your network of family members that can certain parental person in their life may be somebody that can help talk them through a difficult time, and it may be that some going to the point of needing help from Alliance and for some more formalized type of help. I'm really curious, this CDC information talking about 3/4 of students using social media this is the data from 2013 to 2023. I'm really curious to see kind of what the momentum will be like in the coming 5 years, 10 years, with us not, the parents being more aware of, the impacts of social media and using cell phones early on, and how that may impact some of our data down in a few years.
Yes. I was just curious how, when we get to the step of our partners, can you tell us what parents receive as far as resources? Because I know we've talked about this in the past. I'm just trying to understand how it's evolved over the last couple of years. What do parents receive? What does it look like for them when they call one of these numbers, or we try and partner with Alliance? I know we've tried to partner with WakeMed. What do they get from us when they call up for help?
Yeah, so our partnership with Alliance has been so good because they have people embedded in some of the facilities, so that if they go there, for example, I think we might have shared this at one of our last presentations, if they go to one of the facilities, they have people trained to be able to connect with them so that it's more of a warm handoff than just here, call this number. They have someone there, once they sign the form, parent gets permission to talk to us. They then report back to us what the status is, and if they get discharged, whether they're admitted or not, if they're discharged that day from the emergency room or a psychiatric facility, that they communicate that back to the school so we can help with the continuity of care when they return the next day, the next week, the next month. So those are for more of the intense cases, but we have worked, Alliance has helped us to kind of go out through the community and make sure that they're aware of what the services are and what the families need, so that they're very, it's a much more of a connection than just call the number. We do also have a list going out this week to the families because we know that we're not going to be around for a couple of weeks. So we're going to send a reminder to the families about all the resources and how they can get help. So we do that before holiday breaks.
So we connect them to them, but it's basically like I don't want to say hand-holding, but we make sure the process is completed.
We do. And this county has worked really hard to do that. It doesn't happen in a lot of places. And so, and there's a whole team of people with Alliance that we connect with, again, that are embedded in the facilities and then also work at Alliance and then go to the schools. So with the school-based teams, for example, if there's someone who needs support and we know that there's going to be barriers for that family, we connect them with a real person who helps them go to the appointment, get the appointment, and not just that they've made it, but that they followed through, that they've been going to treatments until the treatment's complete. Those are called care coordinators. So we are very unique in that we have something that's that progressive.
So where are the care coordinators? Are they in each individual school?
They're across the county. We don't have one for every school. They get assigned. So every day we get a referral. We process that, and then we assign a care coordinator to a region, and then those care coordinators have a caseload. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And so here we'll see where we are on those screeners. As they were sharing previously, 67,000 students were screened last year. This is where you see that those competencies were seen. It is notable that we are increasing the number of students screened every year and also seeing increases in those competencies as well. And you see that's each competency that is measured across the bottom. This would be from the teacher screener, as Ms. Gordon was saying. And then this is where you see it for each student group in comparison to the goal of 90%. Again, looking at the 67,000 students who were screened last year, this upcoming spring will be the first time that we have all of our students having been screened by our teachers. We do see gaps that follow a similar pattern in predictability as our other data points, but not nearly as wide in these competencies either.
I do want to point out, we won't have 100% of our kids going through the screener because parents do opt out.
Correct. I was going to talk about that.
Yes.
I'm glad you shared that, yeah.
Yes. All students will have been eligible to be screened. Good point. All right, next steps.
Yeah, so this is getting a little bit to what Dr. Pettiford just shared. We certainly want to make sure that this is a vital diagnostic that we can use, as Mary talked about, to kind of sift, right, to make sure we can identify where that risk actually is. We are looking to full implementation for the teacher portion at the end of this school year. We are also planning a pilot to ask parents to join so that we'll have a small group of parents that will have not only the teacher portion but also the parent portion. Want to start small, but certainly want to grow that, and that will begin, planning to have that begin this spring. And then, of course, what we're ultimately looking forward to is the opportunity to hear from our students in this space. And then having those 3 data points triangulated together will give us a much more robust picture of where we really are in this space and how kids feel as well as families feel, so that we can certainly tailor our supports and focus to the students based on that data as we move forward. And I guess I just want to make sure before we move on, are we good around the FIMAS universal screener? Everybody good? All right, I think this last portion, Lisa Allred is here with me as the Assistant Superintendent for Special Education, and actually this is a preview of what we think will be coming in the Student Achievement Meeting that is forthcoming in probably January. But we are partnering together to really start talking a lot about where we are regarding student well-being around restorative practices, really thinking about this as a shift and how we are with one another rather than thinking about a disciplinary action that needs to happen on behalf of students. But we want to move from being punitive, right, to being restorative. We want to start talking about how we're going to intentionally move away from that traditional model and really think about building relationships, collective problem solving, and how do we move towards repairing harm. Our restorative culture needs to be built on trauma-informed and fully accessible, ensuring that students with disabilities and all students are supported, included in that resolution process. This is inclusive of community building circles, restorative dialogue, and formal conferencing where it really gets at mediation to help repair harm that has happened. Ultimately, this restorative work happens both in the big moments, right, but also in the small moments, just a general interaction with a student, creating a consistent environment of safety. And we want to talk about how we're going to move towards a comprehensive level of this being in place at the core, which is in every classroom every day, but also for kids who need that much more intensive support that might be experiencing more challenges with behavior, and how do we mediate our way through that so that we can help support building those relationships and helping with that decision making at the end of the day. And we will do that initially by building our central services staff. We need to make sure our internal staff is trained and that we are building a cadre of individuals that will be able to be trainers and coaches in this work. We will talk about how we can have standardized protocols, just make sure that that's inclusive of the materials that are necessary and an implementation plan. So you'll hear a little bit more about that in January, as we're really, really excited about the work that sits here with us. And again, ultimately, the goal is that we are decreasing any level of exclusionary practices, and that's inclusive of suspensions and expulsions, but it even is really exclusion within the school day or the school building, right? We want kids to stay in classrooms, and we want them to be able to feel successful in those classrooms, and we need to make sure that we're thinking about that for all students, but certainly our students of color and students with disabilities. And we're looking at improving that overall school climate. That gets to kids feel better in the space that they're in, staff feels better in the space that they're in, and there's a sense of belonging for everybody. That's the whole goal. So coming soon, we'll be talking about school climate and coaching with support structures, a deep dive into the discipline data for the 24-25 year, and then some details on this restorative practices in January.
Thank you all for this update. I know that this was a great discussion, and it was a pre-conversation to my board advisory committee meeting, because I know we didn't get to this part, so hopefully Dr. Alfred Keith, those girls are paying attention so we don't have to find ways.
We invited them to watch. Yes.
So I have a couple of questions about the last piece, but I want to at least open up the discussion to my colleagues before I raise mine. So we'll start with our student achievement chair, since the slide is up there.
This has been great. This has been great. I will say, when I worked in the district a couple of years ago, this was specifically restorative practices was brought forth, and it was an ongoing thing. But in all honesty, it quickly became just a buzzword. And I see that it is, I'm thankful and I'm so very grateful that it is something that is being focused on now. But I guess my question is, what did we learn in the in-between time that is making us say, okay, we need to get back to this and make this a core priority?
I think we've learned a lot. And in the meantime, also, we had a pandemic where we had a period of time where we have had a lot of staff turnover so we have a staff that has not necessarily had the professional learning and general classroom management and how do you interact in a school. I mean, some of those basic things happen. I have my own child. She's not in Wake, but she became a teacher in the middle of the pandemic, and she and I have been on the phone more than a few times to talk about how do you set climate in your classroom, right? And she had not, and when she came to the district she was working in, she didn't have a functioning PLC that she could sit at the table with them or go into the classroom next door and watch that teacher do that work. So it's been a unique dynamic. Number one, we have some professional learning that certainly needs to happen for our staff. We also know we had kids in a very different space, and they have different needs now as well. So I think that there's an elevation. I think we've talked about that all along this afternoon, that there's a higher need to make sure that we are intentional about this work. But I also think, to your point, that it's not one thing. It's not just a circle. It is an entire way of thinking. And that's a part of the work that, I mean, to be transparent, that's going to be a part of the work we're in here for. When we talk about having to change mindset, that's deep work, and it's going to take time. And it is about making sure that I'm responsible for my own actions, but I'm also, if I do something that impacts someone else, there will be a consequence in some sense, right? What does that look like, and how do we move from there?
I appreciate the work you all are doing. It's great.
I think I was also here when John Powell was leading those restoratives, and he was just recognized with the Wake Ed Partnership for the work he's done. And so it is great to see that work taking place. I know it helped me to really think through So I was teaching, what is the culture that I want to set, and is it teaching to, to show that I have power? Is it a way of saying this is our communal space? And I think when you look at it from that approach, you're able to really have those meaningful conversations and relationship building, because again, it's an environment that's conducive for learning, with students at the center of that. I had a question regarding the special education piece. I know that it's always exciting to hear about the work that's taking place and the changes, and also shifting the culture of special education, knowing that it's not just the sole responsibility of special education teachers, it's everyone in that building is a part of that IEP team, and it's a part of making sure that teaching and learning takes place for our most vulnerable students. So in this whole creation, where are we with centering family voices, those families that are having concerns? I know there was at one point a committee that was going to be structured for families to have an opportunity to really be a part of the conversation. So are we still in the process with that, or is...
Yeah. So as we are literally planning right now, so that Lisa and I will share with you soon about how we launch this, both at the core level as well as for some students that are more intensive, and what does that look like. But to your point, we need family voice at all levels of what that actually looks like. So there's no doubt that will be a part of the process as we're planning and beginning the implementation of this. I also want to say that, and I'm going to go to, we do have a pilot actually going on, and I feel like I'm sharing a little more of what we'll share later, but we do have a pilot going on currently out of our alternative ed shop that is happening between alternative programming, where a student might be assigned for disciplinary reassignment. So this happens with middle and high school students. We have 4 middle schools and 4 high schools that are partnering with us. We'll share lots of details around this. This is kind of the stuff that gets me up in the morning. It is amazing, some of the work that we have seen that has happened here. And through that partnership, a lot of what happens is we are creating a success plan for a student. And in that success plan is explicit discussion and communication with the family. What is it that student needs? What do you know about what's happening with your student that I don't know? This is what we're seeing. What do you think about what that looks like? So really engaging the family, that's much more of a one-on-one discussion rather than just a collaborative, but we need both, right?
Correct. And I do know, and I've said this quite some time, so I might sound like a broken record, which is fine, but as we're talking about our alternative learning programs, I hope that we're mindful in the future of not necessarily referring to those schools as that name, because that sets a negative connotation, and it also takes away from the great work that those schools are doing. So I hope that we can, as we're talking about this work, that we center some different language, so therefore it is very inclusive, and it's not just centering students, or it's that perception that it's not just for students who have various behavior concerns, but it's for all students. It's a different environment. So I'm a little biased because at least 2 of those are in my district I represent, and I know the great work that Principal Hine is doing at SCORE, and Dr. Perkins at Connection. So the work that they're doing gives a model that is not just a success there, but should be a teaching model for all principals, all schools, to see how do you really center the relationship building, which then changes behaviors, and you also you have the parent buy-in. So it's very exciting work.
Mr. Chair, can we, as a board, give a directive that we have alternative language in place in the next 30 days? Because we keep having this conversation, and I feel like, you've raised it enough times in 3 years, and it's time for a change. And I feel like if we do not put a date on a change, we're going to keep having this language unless you know something
So
about it.
I'm going to direct that to the only employee that we are responsible for.
So Mr. Hirsch, I appreciate that. Let me get with staff to determine what would be necessary in order to make that change, because I know that we've got documentation materials, blah, 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 where that may appear. And so I've heard what the board has said, but let me make sure that whatever's necessary logistically, we can do that, and do that as expeditiously as possible. But I do like the idea of changing vernacular. That's something that's very important, and we can definitely make sure we do all the things to do it as quickly as possible and know what the logistics are.
Thank you, Dr. Daylor, and thank you, Chair.
Any other comments or questions? Not hearing any.
Mr. Chair, can I make one comment? I just want to say to the board, when it comes to behavioral health, you know how very important this is to our staff and what it means to our students. And I want you guys to know how much I appreciate you all continuing to bring attention to this because people in the community listen to these work sessions. Our staff listens to these work sessions. And so when they know and understand that this is something important to the board, then it helps support what it is that what we do when we go out and talk about these changes. As a classroom teacher, I know how very important it is that these things take place. And unfortunately, I know how very sad it is when as a teacher you miss things that you wish you would have known, and you lose students as a result. And so I just want to express to the board that your continued advocacy for this work, everybody in this district will see that, and we need you all to continue that because that helps us push out these issues and these expectations.
That's great. Thank you all for the dialogue, and we had a very lengthy work session and was able to in about 12 minutes. So,
Chair, we can get some HR in 12.
That's fine. At this point, I will entertain a motion to consider confidential information protected under GS 143-318.11A6 and 115C-319.
So,
do I need to read? That's right.
So moved.
The motion.
Second. Thank you.
All right, it's been moved by Vice Chair Hershey, seconded by Ms. Edmonds. All in favor to move into closed session, let it be known by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. We're in closed session.